What is up, Mizzou fans? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com, covering your Missouri Tigers. And today I have brought in the big guns. Brayden is rejoining me once again for this episode because, Brayden, it's finally happened. The Missouri Tigers and Eli Drinkwitz have landed a transfer portal quarterback, as Matt Zenitz of 24/7 Sports is reporting that Penn State quarterback transfer Beau Pribula has committed to Missouri. Big get for Eli Drinkwitz and Mizzou. Pribula had ranked as one of the top uncommitted QBs in the transfer portal. This is obviously the biggest get in the portal this portal season, Brayden, and the most important one because quarterback is obviously the most important position on the team. And it was the one piece that we needed to have confidence going into next year because there's no doubt that Drinkwitz and Mizzou have done really well in the portal so far, but it's like none of it was going to matter until you landed the quarterback, and now you have that piece in place, and it feels like a weight off our shoulders now that Mizzou has landed its quarterback in Pribula, and now we can just enjoy the rest of portal season. But Brayden, off the bat, what are your thoughts on Mizzou landing Pribula? I know that they were in the mix for Fernando Mendoza, the Cal quarterback in the transfer portal. That was the other name that had been thrown around a lot. It was kind of between him and Pribula. Mizzou fans have debated between the two, but I feel like you have a pretty unique take on this. So I want to get your take first. What are your thoughts on Mizzou opting to go with Pribula or getting a commitment from him rather?
Yeah, so it's good to be back since we haven't done an episode or anything in a while. But I will give my very, I think, nuanced take on Pribula. So I am quite possibly the biggest Penn State hate watcher of all time. I despise James Franklin. I despise
Can confirm.
You can confirm that from our interactions in the group chat. I despise Penn State. I was hate watching their game against Wisconsin because I thought that Wisconsin had a great shot to upset them. Wisconsin did have a great shot to upset them. And then Drew Aller got hurt. And Beau Pribula came in and completely shut the door on anything that Wisconsin did. Went 11 of 13 for 98 yards and a touchdown and 26 yards rushing in a quarter and a half. He completely decimated any shot of Wisconsin coming back in that game. And the upside with him as a sophomore versus Mendoza, who led Cal to a 6-6 record, and he didn't play in the bowl game, so just a 6-6 record. Like, I'm not that moved by him. Whereas Pribula, I think the upside is there, and I think with what Mizzou is building and what Mizzou had in place with Brady Cook as a guy who they tried to make run, who they thought could run, I think Pribula opens the door up a lot for what Kirby Moore and Eli Drinkwitz want to do with this offense. And Mizzou still needs a few offensive linemen. And you mentioned that Mizzou's got so many guys in the portal so far, and I've said it time and time again in our group chat. I don't really give a shit until we get a quarterback. What does this matter until we get a quarterback? We still probably need some offensive line help, but Pribula is the kind of guy who is really good at running the football. Like, he is exceptionally good at running the football, and Mizzou fans need to understand this. He can mitigate some of the bad offensive line play because of his running ability. So the offensive line that's losing Membu, Connor Tollison might not be ready to start the season, and Marcus Bryant's graduating. And who knows what Caden Green's future here is going to look like. I think Green's going to be a starter, but he was shaky last year, and he's going into his junior season. So you have a lot of question marks on the offensive line, and I think that Pribula can mitigate some of those issues. So I like this move. I like the upside. I like his possible future at Mizzou. I think that this is a little bit concerning for what we're going to do with Matt Zollers, because we've seen how the transfer portal's gone, and I think it's a complete shit show, and I really don't care to follow the transfer portal that much. But just thinking about next year's transfer portal, if Matt Zoller's not going to get that much playing time and Pribula's going into his junior season, is Matt Zollers, who's a 5-star quarterback, the number 2 quarterback in the class, I think, or he was ranked number 1 in the class at one point.
Yeah, I mean, depending on who you look at.
Yeah, it depends on what site you go to. But is that kind of prospect, is he going to want to sit the bench for 2 seasons at Mizzou when Beau Pribula is going to be here? And we've been saying like, oh, Matt Zollers might be the future. And now like that Zollers had the broken ankle and he didn't play hardly any of his senior season, like is getting a guy like Pribula a move that you're going to be like, is he going to be our quarterback for the next 3 seasons? Like,
yeah. So
that puts that in a little bit of a that's the biggest question mark that comes from this.
Well, so obviously this isn't the guy we all expected Mizzou to target at the beginning. Not the profile, at least, of a guy that had 1 year left of eligibility, was a proven guy, and you knew exactly what you were getting. Beau Pribula, so Miller Moss is the guy that they were going after first. He had 1 year of eligibility left. You knew what he was. He was going to come in here, be that stopgap for 1 year, and then you figure out where Zollers is next year, whatever, right? Pribula could not be more of an opposite from that. He's a little bit unknown. We've seen enough that there's an element of excitement there, but still relatively unknown. He has multiple years of eligibility left, and we don't know what he's going to do, but we seem to think that there's a relatively high ceiling there. Now, I do think it's worth noting that Pribula and Matt Zollers are both Pennsylvania kids, and there was a clip that's been floating around Twitter of them throwing the football together. I think it was from last offseason while Zollers was still in high school and Pribula was at Penn State. So like they're buddies, and I think there's a respect between those two, and they know exactly what this process is going to look like. It's going to be Pribula for a year or two, and then it's going to be Zollers. And as long as Zollers understands that, I'm not too concerned. And I think Zollers was probably involved in the recruitment a little bit. But anyway, I really like Pribula. And towards the end of this process, I think I started to like him more than Fernando Mendoza. Mendoza is good. He has a live arm. He can run as well, but there are some concerns. I mean, you mentioned just the 6-6 record at Cal, and I know Cal is not great. I know their offensive line was terrible.
And granted, they should have been 7-5 and beat Miami because, I mean, they got completely effed over in that game.
Yeah, but my main point is that Mendoza is a guy that we know what he is, where Pribula, I don't know if he's better, but I think there's a chance that he's better. And again, the element of excitement there. And he's a runner as well. And I think he's an even better runner. Like between Cook,
significantly Mendoza, better runner. I mean, Mendoza last year, I mean, and this is including sacks taken, and Cal's offensive line wasn't that
and he
good.
took a lot of sacks.
Yeah. His numbers were 87 attempts for 105 yards. So he's, if you include the sacks there, he's a net neutral in the run game.
Yeah, which is kind of closer to Brady Cook. Like, I think Mendoza's closer to Brady Cook as a runner than he is to Pribula. And here's what I want fans to understand, because Brady Cook has always been labeled a running quarterback. And I don't think he's a good running quarterback. I think he's a good scrambler. I think when he has to run, he has the speed and the athleticism to do it, but he's only good in a straight line. Like, look at the Arkansas game, for example, to end the season. The big run that Brady Cook had for the touchdown to win it. I mean, it was because there was a wide open lane. It was a straight line run. There was nobody in his way on the way to the end zone. That's what Brady Cook is good for. He has the speed to make that happen. But the designed runs, the decision-making when the pocket breaks down, the decision-making, like whether to run or not, is questionable with Brady Cook. And then also just the ability to run. He doesn't make guys miss. If you watch any Pribula highlights or clips from his time at Penn State, like, he can actually run. Like, he's an actual running quarterback. You can run and we haven't talked, Brayden, about Ahmad Hardy, the running back that they brought in, but between him and Pribula, I mean, that is a very, very scary running offense that other teams are going to have to defend. And here's the other thing, and I made this point on the Power Mizzou board when I was on there, but look at Lenora Sellers at South Carolina. Now, I'm in no way saying that Pribula is going to be Lenora Sellers, although it's not impossible that he could be that sort of player. I mean, he has the tools, but I'm not saying he's going to become Lenora Sellers. However, at the beginning of this year, going into this season, everyone made fun of South Carolina and Lenora Sellers and said, he's just a running back. Like, South Carolina doesn't have a real quarterback. And now all of a sudden, everyone wants a Lenore Sellers, and he's one of the top returning quarterbacks in the SEC. Pribula brings that same sort of excitement that Lenore Sellers did to South Carolina fans. I don't know if he's going to be elite. I don't know if he's going to be great, but I think he's good enough based off what we've seen that it has me really excited going into next year. And I've also compared him to like a Diego Pavia, not the strongest arm in the world, but still pretty accurate when he does unload it. He can spin it, like in some of the clips we've seen of him throwing the ball as well. Like he throws a really pretty ball. He's got zip on his passes. People have said he's not a good thrower. I don't really necessarily agree with that. It's just that we haven't seen him throw enough to make a true judgment. But based off the short and intermediate throws he's made, very accurate. And I do have the stats here. So his passing stats from the last couple seasons at Penn State. So obviously he only has 56 attempts, but he has completed 37 of those attempts for 9 touchdowns. Now, Brayden, I am not an expert. However, 9 touchdowns and 56 pass attempts is pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm. Again, I think a lot of those from this year, you look at it, it's garbage time touchdowns against Kent State and Purdue and Maryland. And they're in situations that don't really matter. But again, I'm like, we've still seen the upside when he comes in those situations. He's still an effective quarterback. And again, it's late in games. The rest of the defense is completely washed, and it's the Penn State second team offense. But I'm just going to go back to that Wisconsin game on the road and look at what he did in that game and just how damn good he did, because he genuinely outplayed Aller. Like it's probably a lot of James Franklin just having favoritism towards Aller and like stick with what you got and what you know, and him being good. But I genuinely think that like Pribula was the reason why they won that Wisconsin game. Otherwise, I don't know if Drew Aller goes down and wins that game for them.
Well, they did They did have a Pribula package that they ran during the regular season in big moments where he would come in for a few plays or a drive where he would come in to run like a read option, and the other team, kind of had to figure out, hey, is he going to take off and run with it? Because he's dangerous enough that you have to pay attention to that. And looking at his rushing stats, so he had over 570 yards rushing over the last 2 seasons, and that is pretty impressive, again, considering the amount of playing time that he actually got. And I was reading the Penn State board when he decided to enter the transfer portal, and their fans were pissed to lose him. They did not want to lose him. They felt like he was next in line after Aller. But in this day and age, kids value playing time. They also value NIL money, and I'm sure Beau Pribula did not come to Missouri for free. And so you can't blame a kid for seeking that out in the transfer portal. And it should also be noted that Pribula, he did not want to leave Penn State. He is a Pennsylvania kid that grew up a Penn State fan, was not really a highly rated quarterback coming out of high school, but Penn State offered him a scholarship anyway. And I think that is somewhat important, especially in this portal NIL era where there just seems to be no loyalty with the recruits. Pribula did not make this decision lightly, and I think he's going to give it his absolute all for Mizzou, and that's just something that's really rare nowadays. And Brayden, we never talked about like the portal losses that Mizzou has had. There's been some surprises, but those surprises make you more thankful for guys like Luther Burden. Now, Pribula is not like the level of prospect as Luther Burden, but I don't think this is really a guy you have to worry about transferring out in a year.
I mean, I think it's possible that Aller, after this year, Penn State doesn't have a quarterback, and then Pribula is just like, hey, you want me back? Like, I think that's
I guess nothing's impossible. But
yeah. I mean, there's no point in speculating on next year's transfer portal cycle. So that's not really anything to worry about. I'm just worrying about the games that are ahead of Mizzou. I'm worrying about getting a little bit more offensive line help. I think the defense is in a pretty good spot, but any more additions there are going to be welcomed. But I'm excited for where this Mizzou team is with the ULM running back that you mentioned, with Keon Coleman, with Josh Manning, with Marquise Johnson. Maybe one more maybe one more wide receiver would be nice, but I still like where this wide receiver room's at. I like where our quarterback situation is. I like where our running back situation is, and I like where our defense is at. Maybe a little bit more help on the edge, but this team didn't really have to do much. We lost a little bit, like the Williams-Winnere loss, him going to Nebraska. That was a little surprising, but at the same time, not, because his coach from Lisa McNorth went there. And he's been a real ever since he left, posting literally everybody that's transferring away from Mizzou on his story. It's just very uncalled for, but who cares? I'm excited to see what Mizzou does next year. I think Beau Pribula is the kind of guy that can go out there and beat Kansas, which, as long as Drink does that, he should stay, because we could lose every single game in the SEC next year, but as long as we beat Kansas, I don't care.
Well, so real quick before we wrap it up, I did kind of want to talk about Pribula in comparison to like a Brady Cook, because I have seen some debate from Mizzou fans whether or not this is an upgrade over Cook. I personally think it is. I personally think it is. And look, I mean, Brady Cook has become a touchy subject for Mizzou fans, because it's either you love him or you hate him, I feel like, or that's what it's been made to be. And I like Cook. I don't love Cook. I thought he left a lot to be desired. I feel like Mizzou fans kind of made a lot of excuses for him. Anytime he was playing bad, there was some injury. I mean, he was injured this year, but I just think Cook had a very low ceiling. He was a product of the talent around him. I mean, he only had 9 passing touchdowns this past season. And with our receiving room, like, that just feels criminal. Mm-hmm. And like, Luther's stats were down. Marquise Johnson's stats were down, even though we all thought he was going to break out. Brent Norfleet's numbers were down. Like, it just never felt right this year. And Brady Cook took a big step back. Now, people will attribute that to different reasons. But I think Pribula is obviously a much better runner than Cook. Again, I think Cook was a good scrambler. I don't think he was a good running quarterback. The design runs almost never worked. So there's that. And then just based off the little amount of passing we've seen from Pribula, I think the ceiling as a passer is higher. I'm not saying that he's an instant upgrade over Cook in the passing department, but I think there's a lot more to work with there with the arm talent. And I also found this interesting. I was doing some research on Pribula once I found out that he was a target for Mizzou, and I found a clip of him on YouTube. It was a sit-down interview, and he was talking about how he didn't really start playing quarterback until late in his junior year of high school. He was a former wide receiver, became a quarterback, and he even said his senior year of high school, he really didn't know how to read a defense. He didn't know how to play quarterback. He just was kind of going out there, running around and making things happen. And so that still leaves me excited, because that means there's more to unlock with his game. And I think him developing under Kirby Moore and getting in there with Drinkwitz in this offense and learning everything. I mean, Kirby Moore has developed some quarterbacks in his time. And even though Cook took a step back this year, he took a big step forward last year in Kirby Moore's first season. So I'm more inclined to believe that last year's offense taking a step back was more because of Brady Cook than Kirby Moore. And I know people did have complaints about Kirby Moore. But bottom line is, I think the ceiling is much higher with Pribula, and I think he's more dynamic than Cook. I think he's a big game player, and I'm not necessarily sure Cook was that. Pribula has gotten in the game in some big spots and some big games against, Power 5 opponents, and I think that's really valuable with him coming over here. People calling him, an unknown. He's not a total unknown. It's just that, he needs to get that opportunity to start, but Mizzou's obviously going to give that to him. And I'm really excited to see what he can do, because he's got the intangibles, it seems. He's also got the athletic ability, the physical ability, the upside is high. Like, I like it. And there's not much more to say than that. Like, I like this addition a lot for Mizzou. And I just think, go ahead. No, well, I was going to say the ceiling's sky high for this offense, I think.
I do too. But I think this is the first time Drink has got a starting quarterback in the portal, or what is expected to be a starting quarterback in the transfer portal, because there's still a little bit of the Sam Horn camp of people wanting him to start, which no. So this is going to be Drink's first legitimate test to truly develop a quarterback
of his own.
Because Brady Cook was recruited by Barry Odom. And Cook was always going to come to Mizzou. He was a 3-star with his only Power 5 offer being to Mizzou. Connor Bazelak was a Barry Odom guy who Drinkwitz had him do really good in his first year and then a massive step back in the second year. That's kind of the same thing that happened to Cook these last 2 years. Great first season or great second season, massive step back his third.
Yeah.
So with Pribula, it's Drink's own guy. This is a 100% Eli Drinkwitz quarterback. And it's crazy to say that we are finally getting our first Eli Drinkwitz quarterback in year 6.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see what Drink does. This is his first legitimate quarterback. There's no connections to Barry Odom whatsoever. Let's see what happens. And that is the one thing that Drink truly has not proven or done yet is build his own quarterback. And if he went out and said and handpicked Pribula and said, "You're my guy," then he better be right. Because if he's not, and we go 7-5 or 6-6, where's his program at? There's going to be some questions going into next offseason.
Yeah, for sure. But I think, Pribula is exciting enough. He's going to give us a chance next year. Going back to the Diego Pavia comparison one more time, I just think he's a gamer. I mentioned the intangibles earlier. But yeah, this is Drink's first quarterback, and it better be a good one, because otherwise it's just going to be that thing we always wonder about if Drinkwitz ends up not working out down the line. He definitely bought himself some time with these past 2 seasons, but stuff could always happen, and we might look back and say, man, Drink could just never get the quarterback position right. He had those couple good years with Cook, but he could never get the quarterback position right. But this is his chance. This is his guy. I feel like the sentiment among Mizzou fans is they like it. There's a handful of you guys, I feel like, that are like, nah, I don't like this. Too unproven for me. But there's a lot of us that are excited, and I think that kind of defines this move. It's exciting. I think
for sure
it's an exciting move, and I think it gives people a reason to be interested going into next year. So, yeah, Mizzou landed their quarterback. We'll see what he does. I'm personally a fan of it. So I think that pretty much wraps this up. But Brayden, do you have any other closing thoughts?
Not really. Fuck KU.
There you guys have it. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Some more Mizzou fans can find this. You can check out my work on showmefootball.com. You can check out our other channel, Show Me Movies, where it's mostly been Brayden as of recently. But yeah, that'll be down in the description as always. So with all that being said, we're signing off, and we'll see you guys in the next one. As always, MIZ
ZOU.